Imagine this. Your mother walks into the room, and she looks like your mother, she speaks like your mother, even calls you by your childhood nickname. But something inside you says, that's not her. And it's not just a feeling, you're absolutely certain. You are convinced that she's an imposter, perfectly disguised, eerily familiar, but ultimately a fake. Welcome to the unsettling world of Capgras Delusion, where reality looks the same, but the meaning behind it collapses. The syndrome was first described in 1923 by French psychiatrist Joseph Capgras, who observed a woman named Madame M, and she believed that her family members, her husband, children, and neighbors had all been replaced by identical doubles. Not just once, repeatedly, she thought there was an entire network of imposters constantly rotating in and out of her life. And she wasn't hallucinating, she wasn't delusional in every domain, just this one bizarre corner of her perception. Everyone she loved had been replaced. Capgras called it l'illusion de sosie, the illusion of doubles. At the time, it was treated as a psychiatric oddity, but modern neuroscience has revealed something far more interesting. Capgras delusion isn't just a psychological problem, it's a neuropsychological disconnection. A man in his 40s, recovering from a head injury, wakes up in a hospital room. His mother enters. He stiffens. He says nothing, but later he tells the doctor, pretty calmly and seriously, "She looks like my mother, but she isn't. They've made someone to look like her. I don't know why, but that's not my mom." The doctors test his memory. It's intact. His language? Fine. Vision? Perfect. He recognizes her face, he can describe her features, and he can even tell old stories involving her. But emotionally, she doesn't feel right. And that's the key to Capgras. Recognition without emotional connection. Under normal conditions, seeing a familiar face activates two parallel systems in your brain, which is the fusiform face area, the FFA, which is located in the temporal lobe, and identifies the visual features of the face, like shape and symmetry and spacing. And then there's the limbic system, especially the amygdala, which adds emotional context, like, do you love this person? Do you fear them? Do you trust them? And in Capgras patients, the fusiform area works just fine. They recognize the face visually, but the emotional system doesn't activate. There's no warmth, no gut feeling of familiarity. And the brain draws a strange but psychologically coherent conclusion. If that looks like my mother, but doesn't feel like her, it must be an imposter. It's an eerie, logic-driven delusion. The visual system and the emotional system are no longer talking to each other, and so the mind fills in the blanks with basically paranoia. In the 1990s, psychologists Ellis and Coulthard ran an experiment to investigate further. They took Capgras patients and showed them photos of loved ones while measuring skin conductance response, a tiny change in sweat levels that normally occurs when we see someone emotionally significant. And in healthy individuals, familiar faces triggered a spike, subconscious emotional recognition. In Capgras patients, flatline. No physiological response, just visual recognition, cold and hollow. And strangely, the same patients often did not experience this illusion when speaking to their loved ones over the phone. Why? Because the voice pathway uses different emotional circuits, which are still intact. So, to recap, when you see your mom, she's an imposter, but when you hear your mom, that's totally fine. Capgras delusion is rare, but it appears in multiple conditions. For example, after brain injury, especially to the right hemisphere, in schizophrenia, often the paranoid subtype, and in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia. The unifying theme? Well, disruption in connections between emotional and perceptual systems, especially in the right temporal lobe and frontal cortex. Some researchers argue it's a kind of misfiring theory of mind. You see a face, you know what the face should mean to you, but your own internal model doesn't match what you're feeling, so your brain rewrites the narrative. It tells you a story. And unlike in hallucinations or broad psychosis, many Capgras patients are otherwise cognitively intact. They're aware, rational, and sometimes even tormented by the knowledge that everyone thinks they're wrong. But for them it's clear as day, that's not my wife, that's not my son, someone is impersonating them, and no one believes me. If a tiny disconnect in your brain can make your mother feel like a stranger, how much of your reality is held together by wiring you never even think about? Now, can Capgras be treated? Well, sometimes. Antipsychotic medications can help in cases linked to schizophrenia. In brain injury or dementia, recovery depends on the extent and location of the damage. But here's the strangest part. Explaining the delusion doesn't cure it. You can tell the patient, well, this is your real wife and your brain is misfiring. And they'll nod and say, yes, but still, I know she isn't the same. Because the feeling is stronger than the fact. Capgras Delusion is the mind's uncanny valley, where the familiar turns alien and logic bends to emotion. It's not about forgetting people, it's about forgetting what they mean. And in that strange silent gap between vision and feeling, the self begins to unravel. Thanks for watching.